What movie is so disturbing you would never watch it again? Come and see. It is a World War II movie that focuses on a young boy who joins the Soviets to fight the Germans. And the scenes in that movie are so horrific. There is one scene that involves a barn being burned that my mind still flashes to and makes me sick to my stomach. I can't remember what it's called, but it was based off the true story where that girl was hitchhiking and got kidnapped and lived in a box for 7 years. Wasn't it called The Girl in the Box or something along those lines? Edit. The Girl Next Door, 2007. This movie turned me into an emotional zombie for days after. It's amazing, but don't watch it. The part that really messed me up was learning that it was based on a true story far too closely. The people that committed those horrific acts. Some became family counselors and educators. The mom got parole. No one did their time. People serve more time for marijuana possession. Antichrist is probably the only movie I've ever turned off in discomfort. I have a strong stomach. Exclamation point. Apparently genital mutilation close-ups are my limit. The fox eating itself really disturbed me. 2. Same with the lady ferociously masturbating. Just a dark, strange movie. It was recommended to me by a friend who is super chipper and upbeat. Very odd. Old one, but it's seared in my memory. The Cook the Thief. His wife and her lover. I actually paid to see it in the theater. I don't know what I was thinking. Dead girl. Some guys find a dead girl, she is a zombie, and proceed to continuously have sex with her body. This progresses until one of the guys begins cutting holes into her body to have sex with, as these holes are warmer and cozier. And then he gets infected when she bites him. Edit. Forgot the worst part. We rented this as family movie night, and for reasons I cannot truly understand, watched it in its entirety. So yeah. Watch this horrid film with my mom and siblings. Honestly, just reading your description has ate me up. A French horror movie called Inside a Interior. After a car accident kills her unborn child, a woman goes after the other driver. A pregnant woman. I'd like to say Martyrs, 2008. But chances are I'll rewatch it sometime. Then again, I've been meaning to rewatch Watership Down, 1978, and have not managed to bring myself to it. So, edit. If you're going to check out Martyrs, don't read about it. Go in blind like I did. Leaving Las Vegas. Nicolas Cage lives in a Thai hotel and actively, purposely drinks himself to death. Dear Zachary. Letter to a son about his father. Ed me up. Ratatouille. Semicolon. God, I don't even want to explain. Semicolon. Edit. Alright, since a handful of you think I'm talking about Ratatouille, the great Pixar film, the one we all love, you're very wrong. I'm talking about Ratatouille. As a cash grab knockoff of the original. You can find videos on it, and I found the whole 40-minute thing on YouTube. If you need more information on it, search up Ratatouille on Google, which should show a picture of rats. And then prepare to go down a rabbit hole. Threads. Solo. Edit. Since this is one of the top comments, I'll add a film I just thought of, In a Glass Cage, Tras el Crystal. I don't want to give too much away, but it's a 1988 Spanish film about a former sadistic Nazi who is now paralyzed and living in an iron lung. This is one of the few movies that left me with a visceral reaction of disgust. It's not overtly gory or gruesome, but Jesus is it dark. The atmosphere of the film itself is also so oppressive and bleak. Precious. I saw it in the movie theater and thought I was going to vomit. It was based on the book Push, about a girl who was RP'd by her own father with her mother's help. The girl was uneducated and had 2 kids that were a product of RP. The book showed her progress throughout the years, but watching her story play out on a screen made me look at the world differently. The mom was played by Monique, and anything she was in after that movie, I can't watch it. I get that it was a deep dramatic role for her, but she played it too well. Tusk genuinely ed with me. Especially the pool scenes. Apocalypse Now. I know a lot of people love it. But the scene where the family is hiding something and so the soldiers kill them all and the something turns out to be a puppy. I just wanted existence to be done after that. Eater. I feel I need to add this. I by no means think the entire movie is disturbing. However, for me, that was the moment that I was done. I watched the whole thing and there's some truly amazing moments in the acting, directing, and cinematography. For me, though, those parts were not enough to justify the disturbing parts. There are other reasons I'm not a huge fan of it. But, like many commenters who feel the need to defend their liking the film, those reasons are not relevant to the question. I can recognize the importance and impact of Apocalypse Now, and appreciate it and its place in film history and still be disturbed by that. Or any scene. These things aren't mutually exclusive. Also, thank you for the awards, dear nonnies. Haven't seen Men Behind the Sun mentioned. That one's pretty disturbing. The White Christmas episode of Black Mirror. It's not a movie, but it has more plot than most movies. It's not even about gratuitous gore. It's mostly psychological and hit paranoias I didn't know I had. Also, you can watch it without seeing any other part of the series. We need to talk about Kevin and Antichrist. The book for We Need to Talk About Kevin was so much worse. I almost didn't finish reading it. Eden Lake. I did the whole Requiem for a Dream thing enough in H.S. Semicolon. Dancer in the Dark. Emotionally just brutal. Crushed me. Never want to see again. Event Horizon was deeply disturbing. Wolf Creek marked the beginning of gore PRN. Utterly without hope of survival films and end of more fun horror films like Scream, and I never ever want to watch that I'm bleak again. Bone Tomahawk. It was a really great movie until it was awful to watch. It is very slow moving but the dialogue is great. However, the ending is very hard to watch. Irreversible. Clockwork Orange. I know it maybe isn't as depraved as some things out there, but I've never felt the same thing from watching anything else. Cannibal Holocaust. I'm glad the internet was around by the time I saw that movie. If I had watched it before search engines, I probably would have thought it was all real. I think the thing that does it is that all the animal deaths were real. So the visceral nature of that brought the mind to thinking it's all real. That turtle led me up. Looking back, it is pretty funny the Italian courts made the director get all the actors to show up to prove it wasn't real. The Emoji Movie. Grave of the Fireflies. Do documentaries count? If so, The Cove is beyond ed. The Pianist. Literally every single thing about this movie is unbelievably depressing. The color scheme, the sound, the music, the facial expression, everything. It is a great movie, and had it not very depressing, I'd watch it again. Blue Valentine. Edit. I see that most say movies made specifically to disturb. I chose this one because the explicitly real as the lack of love disturbs me much more. Hereditary. For me it's the wailing of the mother after the funeral. And the fight's tension between the mother and the son get too real for me. The scares actual laid up stuff? I'm unfazed lol. The piano wire was pretty nuts but nothing I couldn't handle. Close second would be Midsommar for the opening scene alone. A Netflix documentary called The Trials of Gabriel Fernandez. It shows a lot of child abuse. It was so disturbing I had to watch it in segments and fast forward through parts. I Spit on Your Grave. The first one especially got me. I think there are 3. Just horrible RP scenes and I was not expecting it. The anime Perfect Blue, I got extremely disturbed watching it and just had to stop. Haven't watched the film all the way through and don't ever want to. C7N. My wife was pregnant at the time and it just got to me. C7N is fantastic. But that is the absolute worst time to watch S7N. Kids. If you are looking for disturbing movies, then most films by Gaspar No Registered Sign would fit the bill. Although I have watched them multiple times because apparently I hate myself. There is also Antichrist by Lars von Trier, which is physically sickening, and Mother by Darren Aronofsky, which, if you can look past the blatant, in-your-face religious symbolism, is an amazing, claustrophobic home invasion horror that gave me pure anxiety. A few other noteworthy disturbing but amazing movies are Sal, Dogtooth, Killing of a Sacred Deer, Suspiria, 2018, and Funny Games. Thanks for listening to my essay. Apparently I need therapy. Edit. Somehow I forgot about unedited footage of a bear, which is a short film you can find on YouTube. I won't spoil it, but for some reason, it disturbed and terrified me so much that I still wake up and think about it in the middle of the night and have to sleep with the light on like a baby. A Serbian film. Edit. Woke up this morning to a ton of awards. Thank you all. Just check out my Rainmeter posts, okay? It feels like a sin even to mention this movie, because no matter how many times you say but don't watch it, seriously, someone watches it every time its name is spoken. Hachi. Gone Girl. It was especially hard for me because I dated an abusive girl who was just like that. Everything she did and said reminded me of my ex so much, and I definitely watched it way too soon after we broke up. I'm convinced she would have killed me had I stayed with her. Great movie though. Just hard to watch. None really. The Poughkeepsie Tapes was probably the most genuinely disturbing movie I've ever seen, and I'd watch it again no problem. A Serbian film was just cheap shock value and wasn't substantial enough to be considered disturbing to me. I won't watch it again cause it sucked. Drive. It's a great movie, but I can't watch it again. Graphic violence really bothers me, especially injuries to the head. There is a scene where Ryan Gosling crushes someone's head. I had nightmares about it for days. Never watch Irreversible. The Butterfly Effect. The dog scene. I can't. Requiem for a Dream. Every second of it. I've seen it once, a decade ago, and still every now and then something brings me back to it vividly. Even the beep boop at stoplights reminds me of the song. The Strangers. It's the only film I ever regretted watching alone. The psychological terror is intense, and it's based on a true story. Funny Games. Would you rather? 8 Below saw it in theaters. It's a kids movie, but all I remember is watching each of the dogs' horrific deaths. One got dragged under by an orca. That movie, and one dog barely making it out alive just after watching the second to last dog die. Hated it. I was little. Gummo, whatever the FCK you would call that, is my number one never again. They probably use that movie to torture people in hell. Unpopular opinion, but Full Metal Jacket. The Girl Next Door. About Sylvia Likens. Poor baby. I loved End of Evangelion. However, I can't bear to watch that scene where Asuka gets stabbed in the eyeing skull and is then promptly torn to shreds as Shinji arrives to find out he was too late to save the girl he loved. SN sign. That entire ending was a euphemism I know I didn't need. The Poughkeepsie Tapes. Not a full-length film, but the strange thing about the Johnsons really messed me up from the beginning to end in those 30 minutes. I'm just using this to add movies to my watch list. Irreversible. Serbian film. Requiem for a Dream. Cannibal Holocaust. The normal responses that are usually answered to this question. Serbian film really isn't as bad as people make it out to be. The content is awful, but the presentation isn't nearly as bad as people make it out to be. The movie is actually well made. It literally catches solely for the content, but you'll still feel like a sucker for watching it by the end. Because it's Ed. and not something I'd ever recommend to anyone. But from a technical perspective, it is well made. The cinematography is dope. And so is the score. If you can get past the shock, it would be a good movie. Edit. Serbian film is literally what movies like Cannibal Holocaust and Faces of Death were years ago, and will 100% be regarded that way years down the line. Errors ahead. Old boy. Just thinking about it makes me want to throw up. Mostly just because of how ed up the whole plan was from the start. Trainspotting. Henry. Jaws. The Revenge. We need to talk about Kevin. Still think about it every so often. Really ed me up. Still does. Not a good first date idea. Born on the 4th of July. Fantastic movie, but I'll never watch it again. Tom Cruise should have won the Oscar that year. Cannibal Holocaust. Real animal cruelty was the worst part. I'm sure everyone says this here. Bambi. $1 Million Baby made me so mad I can't even talk about it. Pink Flamingos by John Waters. I think I got 5 minutes into Don't with Cats and had to turn it off. His YouTube videos did it for me. I knew I could never watch the whole thing. Oh, I watched the whole documentary. It was awful. But fascinating. Spoilers BTW. You find out he was literally mimicking horror movies he's seen. And that's why he did a lot of the stuff he said he did. Eventually he got caught though. It's the stupidest film ever, but Megan is missing. Horrible acting. Terrible cinematography. Bad dialogue. Cheesy as. But the last 22 minutes of that film had me seriously ed up that I have never watched it since. If you choose to watch it, I would look it up first and read, because the contents of the film can be very triggering to people who've experienced similar trauma. Barry W. Ryan Reynolds. Hard Candy. With Elliot Page and Patrick Wilson. I thought it was a good movie, but it made me so uncomfortable I don't know if I can watch it again. The Deer Hunter. The Road. You mean the movie that got me banned from picking out any more movies at my house? Why did I have to read this thread at 3 AM? Annihilation. There's just something about the overall tone of that movie that terrified me so much. The bear scene and the scene where one of the girls turn into a tree is the one that takes the cake for me. House of 1000 Corpses. Paul Blart. Bridge to Terabithia. Go to be Cats for me. The Hills Have Eyes. Hello, the Green Inferno. Not only is it pretty much murder PRN, but the female genital mutilation and virginity test really just doesn't sit right and makes me horrifically uncomfortable. Honestly, Hereditary and Midsommar. They portrayed mental illness so graphically and perfectly that it caused me to dissociate and cry for hours after watching. If you have mental health issues, watch those at your own risk. I saw Deliverance when I was like 12 or 13. What a way to scar a child. Have never wanted to go on a canoe trip up a river or watch that movie again since. For me, it was Schindler's List. It's a vastly important movie to watch, as I think it really helps people grasp the severity of the Holocaust. But that movie deeply disturbed me. Only thing that was worse for me was when I went to the Holocaust Museum Memorial in D.C. I cried so hard I puked. The memory of the above two things reminded me of the boy in the striped pajamas. My brother and I watched this movie. I must have been like 15 and 12. And by the end we just hugged it out sobbing. A senseless waste of life. Then you realize that it was on such a vast scale. Haven't watched that movie since. I'm now 26. Really? No one said it? Human Centipede. Only watch the first one. Midsommar. Traumatized me. The suicide scene triggered me so bad I started crying. When I watched the movie, it was a few months after I attempted, but I'm happy now. There is an emphasis on disturbing. I am going with Hereditary, The Thing 1982, and the original creepypasta on Ted the Caver. With an update. I was exaggerating on The Thing. I'd gladly watch that movie again. I mainly wanted to point out the detail on how real The Thing looks in the movie. Have left this detail out. Frozen. And no, not the Disney movie. I'll let it go any day of the week. Now I'm talking Frozen about the people who get stuck on the ski lift. Human error. Not a psycho killer. Or deadly SX cult. Just a thing some dumb kid could accidentally do somehow. It's just too real. The Lobster. It's disturbing not in horror and blood, but just how it plays out is just outright disturbing. The ABCs of Death. Jesus Camp. I'm a Christian. That movie helped me understand why so many people hate Christians. Schindler's List. I know it's a movie that most people need to see. But I remember seeing the end scene where he started listing off items he could have used as bribes to save more people once he found out the war was over, and just absolutely having my heart wrenched out by it. It was a fantastic movie, albeit a disturbing one. Marley and Me. What? Why? It's a great 45-minute movie that I always turn off when the dog starts looking kind of old. Black Swan. I know it's not a scary movie or gory at all. Banners. A love story. It is a documentary about a girl who was brutally murdered by her family for eloping. In what is commonly referred to as an honor killing. It's a devastating film. There is a scene where the lead investigator reads a transcript the police acquired via phone tapping. The transcript is of one of the murders bragging to his cousins about the gruesome details of the murder. And it's extremely difficult just to hear the words said out loud. Honestly, it makes me want to retch just thinking about it. So be warned if you haven't already seen it. Not a single person has said American History X. My mom literally forbid me from watching that movie because she said it's so disturbing. It's uplifting. It shows the worst of us can change. And I already know neo-Nazis who wish to curb stomp my face. Already exist. Mysterious Skin. Cannibal Holocaust. Should be on the top of this list. Watch it if you want to see real live slaughtering of animals, not props. Director Ruggero Deodato was taken to court to prove that he hasn't slain real people for his motion picture. I still think the real animal slaughtering in the movie was unnecessary. Last House on the Left. A Serbian film. It's literally exploitation for exploitation's sake. The filmmaker purposely made the most absurdly disgusting film he could think of as a giant U to the Serbian film board. If you go into it knowing that, it's almost funny how ridiculously distasteful it is. I'm still more disturbed that I sat through all of Adam Sandler's Jack and Jill than this film. I did an IMDb. Read the first few severe SX parts. An LLY-ARPing a newborn. ARPing a child to where his anus is exploding blood. ARPing a girl then decapitating her. Yeah, I'm mentally scarred for life just reading that. IDK why that exists. Edit. Holy crap, thanks for over 500 upvotes. My most ever by far. Did not expect this. Mother. This movie felt like a fever dream. I didn't find it traditionally scary, but I watched it 4 years ago and I still think about it at least once a month. I can't even explain how weird it makes me feel. One of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre ones, where the family is eating the people. Is that all of them? IDK. I didn't like it. Also, The Hills Have Eyes in the sequels. The Green Mile. That movie gave me so much stress. Sinister by Blumhouse Films. Sinister. Part 2 was even more sinister than the first. It was the first and only horror movie in my life to give me a legitimate jump scare. You know the scene I'm talking about. It. I was thinking of Insidious and Insidious Chapter 2. Not Sinister. Slither, I swear after over 9 years this still haunts me. American History X. 365 days. Netflix really tried to put a veil on the disturbing storyline by casting an attractive man to play a wealthy character and making the cast live a luxurious life of crime, but looking back on it, it romanticized kidnapping and Stockholm Syndrome and had overpowering sexual tones and themes. Killer Clowns from Outer Space. Cape Fear with Robert De Niro. The Silence of the Lambs. I have no problem with brutal movies, but I can't watch The Silence of the Lambs without throwing up. The scene where Hannibal Lecter cooks the brain of that guy, while the guy is still alive and answering, and giving the guy his own brain to eat. Urksugf. Edit. It's actually Hannibal, as I just learned. So that scene is actually from Hannibal, the sequel to Silence of the Lambs, but I get what you're saying. Personally, I love both those films. Disturbing? Let's see. Proper disturbing. A Serbian film, you know why. Irreversible. That RP scene almost made me throw up my lunch. Sad disturbing. Lake Mungo, my mother, sister and I sat down to watch it cause we are horror fans. All three of us were left sobbing and in philosophical anguish. The entire idea of the film is so tragic and it is executed so well. It becomes disturbing. Happiness. Misery PRN. Lovely Bones maybe. Is not that violent, but I watched it when I was a little girl and it was so freaking sad. Not a horror film, but Lilia Forever made me feel so awful I will never watch it again. It starts with children dealing with poverty, abandonment and drug abuse in the slums of post-Soviet Russia, and from there moves on to human trafficking and sexual slavery. It was sickening, heartbreaking, and, as an added bonus, it was loosely based on an actual girl's death. It's a reality in our world that people should be aware of and oppose however they can. But as the subject of a movie, now that City of God left me with such hopelessness and sadness. I couldn't sleep well for a week after watching it. Precious. That movie. Raw. I almost lost my lunch during the part where she's pulling her own hair out of her throat. Hair is a huge trigger for me and I had to turn it off. And it still haunts me even during waking hours. Big Buffskis. Coraline still freaks me out to today. Gummo. Megan is missing. What ate me up most was the reveal of the plastic oil drum that we constantly see in his basement containing her decaying and dead friend. Less than sign. The movie itself wasn't too great, but the RP scene and screaming as she is getting stuffed into the barrel with her dead friend as she is getting buried alive really stuck with me mentally. The movie is just head up and uncomfortable.